what's up, friends? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Zayin, Daf 77 of Masechta Yoma. Chevra, we're getting kind of close to the end over here, you know? Masechta Yoma has 88 pages, and we're on 77. We're getting there. The first bulk of today's Daf is kind of out there. It's this discussion between like Gavriel and Daniel. Kind of interesting, I guess. A bunch of psukim. And then we move forward on the 5 inuyim. We talk about an alternative way to learn out Rechitza. We also talk about Tashmish Hamita. We talk about some other details as well about Rechitza, Sicha. So some interesting stuff on today's daf. Let us begin. Where should we begin? On Daf Ayin Vav Mud Beis, the first of the wide lines towards the bottom, so about 5 lines from the bottom. Mai vani basi bidvarecha. Gavriel says to Daniel, he says, I came bidvarecha, on your word. What is this? So now we come on this whole interesting journey. Hani dichsev, this is what the pasuk says, V'shivim ish mizikne beis Yisrael, that Yechezkel was in Bavel, and it says that in a nevuah, in a prophecy, so then, or maybe in a dream, was it? So the Eibishter takes Yechezkel, and he takes him to Jerusalem, and he sees therein, V'shivim ish mizikne beis Yisrael, that there were 70 people from the elders of Israel, V'ya'ozniyah ben Shafan omed besocham, and Ya'ozniyah ben Shafan was standing among them. Omdim lifneim, standing before them. V'ish miktarto biyado, and each person had his incense burner in his hand. Ve'atar onan aktoris ola, and there's a cloud of smoke going up. Va'ishlach tavnis yad va'ikacheni betzitzis roshi, that the Eibishter took me by my hair. V'tisaosi ruach ben ha'aretz v'ben hashamayim, and he took me, kind of like flew me almost, but holding him by the hair. So I guess I don't know, what's it called when you hold somebody by their hair and move them places? Carry them by their hair, I guess. Between the heaven and the earth. V'tava osi Yerushalayim b'maris Elokim, and I came to Jerusalem in a heavenly vision. El Pesach Shara Pnimis Apon Tzafona, by the inner door in the north of the Azara. Asher Sham Mosav Semela Kina Hamakne. Hamakne? What's the word? Hamakne. That by this gate to the Azara was this getchke, was this idol that was placed there, and you had all these yidden standing there, burning incense for the getchke. Shver matzav. Vayavo osi. Vayave osi el chatzer beis Hashem apnimis, and he took me to the inner courtyard of the house of God. V'nei pesach heichal Hashem ben ulam v'nei mizbeach, and there was the entrance to the heichal between the ulam and the mizbeach in the azara. Uvein ha-mizbeach ke'esim v'chamisha ish, and between the ben ha'ulam v'la-mizbeach there was 25 fellows. Achareim aleichal Hashem ufneim kedma, their backs were towards the heichal, and they were facing towards the sun. V'hem mishtachvim kedma l'shemesh, and they were bowing eastward towards the sun with their backs towards the west, towards the heichal. V'mash mishnema ufneim kedma in yodeh shachareim aleichal Hashem. Fekti Gemara, why does the pasuk have to say that their backs were towards the heichal and they were facing the sun? If I already know memele that if they're facing eastwards, so then their back is westwards. That's the way it goes. So how come the pasuk needed to indicate that their backs were towards the heichal? You hear that, Cheve? Outrageous. They were pasha defecating darin ben ha'ulam v'la-mizbeach. Oh my goodness gracious, can you imagine? Don't try too hard, but insanity. Amla HaKadosh Baruch Hu Michael. So the Eibishter says to Michael, Sarcha u'mascha, your nation has like messed up huge time. Amr l'fanav Ribono shel Olam. So then Michael says to God, he says, Master of the world, Dayu latovim sheboim. Well, at least maybe you could save them on the count of the good ones that are among them. Amr lo, the Eibishter says, Ani soref osam v'latovim sheboim. The Eibishter says, no way, no how, I'm going to burn them and even the good ones among them. Everyone. Miyad, immediately, Vayomer, ela ishlavus habadim, that the Eibishter says to the fellow who is wearing the linen garments, that is a reference to Gavriel. Vayomer boel beinos lagalgal el tachas lekruv, go among the ofanim underneath the kruv. Umalichofnecha gachle eish mi beinos lakruvim, and fill up your hands with fire, with coals of fire from between the kruvim, uzrok ala ir, and throw these coals on the city and destroy everything. Vayover le'enai, and says, I think it's Daniel, he's saying that he saw, or maybe Sicheskel saw that Gavriel did this. He stepped forward to take the coals. Miad vayishlach hakruv es yadu mi beinos lakruvim, and the kruv took coals from between the kruvim, ela eish asher beinos hakruvim, from the fire that was between the kruvim, vayisa vayitein ela el chofnei levush habadim, and this kruv took a scoopful of coals, of fiery coals, and put it in the hands, in the cupped hands of Gavriel. Vayikach vayetze, and Gavriel took the fiery coals and left. Amr of Chana bar Bizna, Amr of Shimon Chasida, ilmale lo nitztanenu gechalim miyado shel kruv liyado shel Gavriel, if not for the fact that during the transfer, that while the kruv was transferring the fiery coals from him to the hands of Gavriel, and the coals cooled down a little bit during the transfer, there would be no Yidden left, not me, not you, nobody. But because the fiery coals cooled down a little bit while they were being transferred from the kruvim to the hands of Gavriel, for that reason, not everybody was destroyed. And the pasuk says, the fellow wearing the lavush abadim, who's wearing the linen clothing, i.e. Gavriel, that he had the pillow, I believe, of a scribe on his loins. Meshiv davar lemar, he replied to the Eibishter, Asisi kashet zivisani, I have done as you have commanded me. Mission accomplished. Mission complete. Rabbi Yochanan had gesagt, at that time, they took out Gavriel from behind, like the curtain by God. Umechyu shisin pulse denura, and they whipped him 60 fiery lashes. Amrule, and they said to Gavriel, Ilo avadit, lo avadit. Look, if you're not going to do something, don't do it. But avadit, amai lo avadit, kidefakduch. But if you were going to do it already, why didn't you do it as you were supposed to? The Eibishter said, take the fiery coals and destroy everybody. But that's not what Gavriel did. He had the kruv take fiery coals and transfer it to him, and it cooled down in the process, and therefore the coals didn't have the desired effect. So they whipped Gavriel with fiery lashes, and they said, hey, Gavriel, if you're not going to listen, that's one thing, but if you're going to listen, listen. V'oda avadit leislachin meshivin ala kalkala. And you know what? Fine. And then even if you did do it incorrectly, what about the concept of a meshivin ala kalkala? You don't report back sort of a failure. And therefore, if you didn't do it properly, why did you come back to the Eibishter and say mission complete? So then they brought over Dubiel, the officer, the angel officer of the Persians, and they put him in place of Gavriel, and Darton was Dubiel for 21 days. This is what the pasuk says. That Gavriel says that the officer of Paris was standing opposite me, of Persia was standing opposite me for 21 days. And Michael one of the officers came to help me, says Gavriel. But before Michael came, it was just me alone with the king of Persia for 21 days. They gave the king of Persia, this angel officer of Persia, they gave him 21 kingships, Ufarvasa the Mashig, as well as the port of Mashig. And then the Persian officer requested that the Yidden should have to pay him a special head tax. Kosvule, they wrote that in a contract for him. Ksivuli Rabbanan Ba'akarga Kosvule. He requested that not just the regular people, but even the rabbis should also have to pay a head tax. They said no problem. They wrote it down on a document there in heaven. And when it came time to sign the document and make it official, Gavriel got up from behind the curtain by God and he said, that, it is futile to the fellows who wake up very early to go to work and get back very late, that they just work and work and work, and they eat this lechem atzavim, they eat this like sad bread. But those people who push off sleep from their eyes to study Torah, the Eibishter gives them sustenance and make sure that they have. So meaning you have people who work all day and they don't study Torah and they work and work and work to get their miserable bread, whereas people who wake up early and go to sleep late to study Torah, so then the Eibishter makes sure that they're taken care of. What does it mean that so he gives to the people who kind of push off sleep from their eyes? Rabbi Yitzchak says, Rabbi Yitzchak, these are the wives of the Talmidei Chachamim that they push off sleep in this world, waiting for their husbands to come home. And they get olam haba, meaning he was trying to make the argument that even the wives of the Talmidei Chachamim who are supporting their husbands, who are Talmidei Chachamim, they merit an olam hazeh and olam haba. Certainly the scholars themselves should have special merit and should be exempt from paying this tax. They didn't listen to Gavriel. So then Gavriel says, Master of the world, if you had all of the wise people of the nations of the world on one side of the scale, and you have Daniel on the other side of the scale, wouldn't he outweigh all of them? So again, look at the significance of the Chachmei Yisrael, and they shouldn't have to have this burden of this tax. The Eibishter says, who is this? Who is saying all these positive, meritorious things about my children? They said, Master of the world, it's Gavriel. So he says to them, let him come. I came bidvarecha on account of your words. And this is sort of going full circle, meaning the Gemara started by saying, "My vani basi b'dvarecha." What does it mean when Gavriel says that I came on account of your words? So that was this whole long thing to say that Gavriel said, make the Yidden exempt from this tax, or at least the Talmidei Chachamim, because look how great Daniel is. And then the Eibishter invites in Gavriel, and Gavriel says to Daniel that I came in on account of you, on account of being Melamed Zchus for you. They said to Gavriel Leol Ailu, they brought him in. So he came in and he found that this fellow Dubiel, this angel messenger officer of Persia, he had this contract that was about to be signed, which says that the Yidden and even the Talmidei Chachamim have to pay a special tax. But Lemir Mamine, Gavriel tried to swipe it away from him. Bila'ah, the Persian angel, swallowed it up. There are those who say that the contract had not yet been signed, it was written but not yet signed, and then it got swallowed up, so it never got signed. There are those who say that no, a taka even was signed. However, however, when this angel swallowed it up, it all got erased and messed up. So the contract was never really effective. And that is why in the Persian Empire there are those Talmidei Chacham who pay the tax and those who don't, because it's not really clear what ended up happening with it. Gabriel then continues, and then lo and behold, I leave, and sure enough, who's coming? Now the king of Greece is coming. And he cried out, but nobody was listening to Gabriel once again. Wow. What an interesting anecdote. All right. Now the Gemara continues, V'baisema, if you want, I will say, Rechitza dikre inui minolon mehocha. How do we know that Rechitza is called inui? It comes from here. Meaning, we had said at the end of the day yesterday that the Pasuk says, Vasoch lo sachti. Where was this? It was Daniel, right? He says Vasoch lo sachti from the fact that it could have said Velo sachti, that it didn't apply oil, but it says Vasoch lo sachti, so that includes also Rechitza. I can give you another explanation, says the Gemara. If you want, I will say, Rechitza dikre inui minolon. How do I know that bathing is called inui, affliction? Mehacha, from here. Dichsivu lev yasser akoyin Amar Melech, that Shlomo Melech said to Evyasar the Kohen, Anosos lech, go to Anosos, al sadcha, to your field, ki ishma v'sata, because really you're deserving of death. Uvayomazelo amischa. However, says Shlomo Melech, I will not kill you today. Ki nosasa es aron Hashem l'fnei David avi, because you carried the aron of God before David my father. V'chi isanis or isanisa. And that you were afflicted with all that my father was afflicted with when he ran away from Avshalom. Okay, fine. So we see that there was some kind of affliction in the context of David. And it says about David, Ki Amru, that they said, Ha'am Ra'ev, that the nation is hungry, V'ayef, and tired, V'tzame, and thirsty, Bamidbar, in the desert. Ra'ev Milechem, V'tzame B'mayim. Okay, so clearly, hungry is from bread, and thirst is from water. Ayef mimai. What does it mean that they were tired? Tired from what? Lav merechitza is not that they needed a good bath. So we see, and it says that ki isanisa, that you were afflicted. So being hungry, tired, and apparently being hungry, thirsty, and apparently needing a bath is called inui. So that's how we see that washing is considered inui, bathing is considered inui, affliction. V'dilma minila as a sandal. But maybe, suggests the Gemara, maybe Ayef doesn't mean from Rechitza, from bathing. Maybe it means he wasn't wearing any shoes. El Amar Bitzchak Me'acha. Rather, says Rabbi Yitzchak from here, this is how we know that Mayim is called Inui. Mayim Karim al Nefesh Ayefa. Well, the Pasuk says Mayim Karim al Nefesh Ayefa, cold water on a tired soul. So we see that Ayef is Davka Rechitza. V'dilma Mishtiya. But maybe it's referring to drinking, not bathing. Miksiv bin nefesh ayefa al nefesh ayefa ksiv. It doesn't say in a tired soul, it says on a tired soul. So we see that it's referring to bathing, and it's called Ayef, and Ayef is compared to Inui. So we see that bathing is considered an Inui. Okay, very good. Unilas asandol minolon. How do we know that not wearing shoes is considered inui? The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, "V'David ola b'maile azeisim," that David was going up har azeisim. Ola uvochav v'rosh lo chafui. He was going up and he was crying and his head was exposed. What's this ayin? V'hu holech yachef. And he was walking borvis. He was walking without shoes. Yachef mimai. What does it mean he's walking borvis? Lav minilas asandol. Isn't that what it means? He was taka walking borvis. He was taka walking without shoes on. So we see that that it's pretty schwer to not have any shoes. No, maybe it's not that he was borvis. Maybe it means that he didn't have his horse and that he didn't have his whip, but he was wearing shoes. Maybe Taka means from here, this is a pasuk by Yeshaya. It says, go and wear sackcloth above your loins, and take off your shoes from your feet. And it says that he said that Yeshayahu did this. Haloch Arom, he was walking naked, v'yachef and borvis. Yachef mimai, la menilas sandals. So when it says that he was yachef, what does that mean? Mistama means he wasn't wearing any shoes. To which the Gemara says, wait, maybe it doesn't mean that he was borvis, maybe it means that he was wearing shoes, but they were patched. They were like, in shvach. The ilote machi, because, and I'll prove it to you how we know that yachef means that he was wearing shoes, but just kind of patched up shoes. Because arum mamish, well, when it says in the same passage that he was arum v'yachef, that he was naked and he was also borvis, does it literally mean that he was mamish naked? No, el b'vgadim bluyim, it means that he was wearing clothing, garments that were worn out. So here also, when it says that he was borvis, it doesn't mean that he was mamish borvis. It means that he was wearing shoes that were patched up. So still, how do we know that an ilas sandal is considered a what's it called? An inui? So prevent your legs, your feet from yachef, and your throat from thirst. Mini atzmich min achet. Hold yourself back, prevent yourself from sinning. Kedosh lo yavo raglecha lidei yichuf, so that hold yourself back from sinning, so that you don't have to walk around borvis. Mini lishonach midvarim betelim kedosh lo yavo gronech lidei tzama. Hold back your tongue from speaking silly things, so that you won't be thirsty. Got it? Givaldik. So there you go. So therefore, borvis is equated with an inui. Therefore, on Yom Kippur, we don't wear leather shoes. Tashmish Shamita dikra inui minolon. How do the Tashmish Shamita is called inui? Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, that Lavan says to Yankiv, Im taines benosai v'im tikach noshim, that if you are te'aneh, lashon inui, my daughters, v'im tikach noshim, or if you take additional wives. Now this part gets a little bit, I don't know if spaghetti is the right word, but yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get us moving through this smoothly. Here we go, it's just a few lines. So we want to say that what that means. What does it mean? Imtaines benosa. It means that if you don't sleep with them, if you prevent them from the inui, from the ona that they're entitled to, v'imtikach noshim, or if you take additional wives upon my daughters. Lavan says, I don't want you taking additional wives. So we see that te'aneh is lashon tashmish, that you have to make sure to be with my daughters and not ignore them. V'imtikach mitzaros b'seder. So we see that te'aneh is lashon tashmish. Ve'ema idi v'idi mitzaros. Maybe they're both talking about tzaros. Maybe when it says imtanes benosa v'imtikach noshim, maybe v'imtikach noshim is an explanation of what it means imtanes benosai. So they're both talking about tzaros and saying, right, imtanes benosai, what does that mean, imtanes benosai? Imtikach noshim benosai. Don't take additional wives on my daughters. I don't want you to create a situation where you have too many wives and my daughters aren't getting the attention that's deserving of them. To which the Gemara says, Miksiv imtikach. I'm sorry, Miksiv imtikach ve'imtikach ksiv. To which the Gemara says, no, it doesn't say imtanes benosai imtikach noshim, in which case imtikach noshim would be an explanation of imtanes benosai. Rather it says imtanes benosai ve'imtikach noshim, which means that it's not an explanation of imtanes benosai, it's in addition to imtanes benosai. Ve'ema idividi mitzaris, but still, maybe I'll say that they're both talking about do not add additional wives, but chad l'tzaros didei v'chad l'tzaros da'asin le'me'alma. Maybe the first one is saying, don't, so meaning, imtanes b'nosai v'imtikach noshim b'nosai, maybe first what he's saying is, if you, chad l'tidei, do not add, Bilhah and Zilpah, to make them, on the same level as my daughters, Rachel and Leah. And not only Bila and Zilpa, but also you shouldn't add more wives that come from like outside of the immediate family. Kilu, don't add more wives in addition to Bila and Zilpa. Dumya de imtikach, right, which would be similar to imtikach, right? So v'imtanim and v'imtikach would be like the same idea of taking additional wives. But the Gemara says, but that doesn't really make sense in that sense, right? Meaning, if you want to say don't do this and don't even do that, so you would start with the more severe thing and say don't even do this less severe thing. So in this context, it shouldn't be, well, the way it should be in this context is that really don't take additional wives from outside of the immediate family. Don't like additional wives. Don't do that. But even don't promote Bila and Zilpa to the same level as Rachel and Leah. That's what it should say, right? However, miksiv imtikach v'imtaine, it doesn't say imtikach v'imtaine, which would be that, which is don't take external wives, plus don't even promote Bila and Zilpa. Imtaine v'imtikach ksiv. It says imtaine v'imtikach, kilu, don't promote Bila and Zilpa, and don't even take external wives, which would be the backwards order, and it doesn't really make sense. Therefore, end of the day, the point being, imtaine, right? Imtaine is benosav, imtikach nashim means, te'aneh is talking about lashon tashmish, v'imtikach nashim is talking about saris, two separate things. Te'aneh is lashon tashmish. That's what we need to know. Amalei Rapapa asks Abaye, Hatashmish gufa ikre inui. He says to Abaye, wait a second, why do we have to learn out from this complicated taich by imtanes benosai? Te'aneh is by definition a lashon of tashmish, right? Hatashmish gufa ikre inui. Inui is just a synonym for tashmish anyways. Why do we have to bring like a sort of this delicate drasha? Inui literally is just tashmish. The pasuk says Vayishkav also ve'aneh, that it says by Shem and Dinah that he slept with her vaya'aneh, that he slept with her. So we see that ya'aneh literally just means tashmish. There you have it. Abaye says no, you could argue that what means vaya'aneh means that no, Vayishkav also, that he slept with her once. Vayanel, that then the rest of the time that they were together, he didn't actually sleep with her anymore, even though she wanted to sleep with him. He was sort of like Vayanel, he afflicted her by not sleeping with her anymore. So therefore, in that case, Yanel is actually to wait and not to actually have intercourse, and therefore that's not necessarily proof that inui literally means tashmish, and therefore we learn it out from imtanes benosai v'imtikach nashim benosai. Fine. There we go. Just like you're not allowed to wash your entire body on Yom Kippur, you're also not allowed to wash parts of your body, right? Like you're not even allowed to wash your hands properly, just like a little bit. If your hands got dirty with like mud and excrement, well then you could just wash your hands regularly. Also, when it comes to anointing with oils, you can't apply oil to your entire body. You also cannot apply oil to even parts of your body. But if he was unwell, or if he had, I think, like warts or something on his head, you can apply oil. No problem. Tana de Menashe was telling this message of Menashe. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer says, Reb Shimon Gamliel Madicha Isha Yoda Achaz B'Mayim, that a woman can wash one of her hands in water v'nosenes pas l'tinok, so that she can give bread to a child ve'ena chosheshes, and there's nothing to be concerned about. Amar Olav al Shammai Azakin, that they said to Shammai the Zakin, Shelo ratz la'achil biyado achas, he didn't want to feed a child with one hand. So he didn't want to wash his one hand in order to feed a child, because all of they said to him, they made a gzera that he must la'achil b'shtei yadayim, that he can even wash both of his hands, that he should wash both of his hands and feed the kid, because otherwise he wasn't going to feed that kid at all, because he didn't want to wash his hands at all. My time on Rabbi Mishum Shivta, Abai says, because there's some kind of demon Shivta that if you don't wash your hands, Shivta can get involved in chaval. So therefore, wash your hands, feed the kid. Weiter. Taner Rabbanu, the Rabbi said, "Holich la'akbil pnei aviv, or pnei rabo, or pnei mishagado mimenu." If a fellow is going to greet his father or his teacher or somebody who's greater than he is, over at Savar Bamayim, he can go on Yom Kippur up into his neck in water, ve'eno choshesh, and it's no problem, right? So even though we said that you cannot bathe, but if you're going somewhere to greet your teacher, your rabbi, somebody greater than you, so you can walk through, if you have to walk through water, that's fine. What if it's a student going to the teacher? No, the opposite. What if it's the teacher going to the student? Can a teacher walk, wade through water in order to go to the student? Tashma Kaminir the Amr Yitzchak Bar Bachana Ani Chazise Liziri. I saw Ziri the Azul Gabi Rebchia Bar Ashi Tamide. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bachana that Itaka saw that Ziri went to his student Rebchia Bar Ashi. So you see that yes, a teacher can go through this water up to his neck to even to go to his student. Rav Ashi Omar says Rav Ashi, no, that's not what happened. Hahu Rebchia Bar Ashi who the Azul Gabi the Ziri Rabbi. Says Rav Ashi, no, that's not what happened. What happened was, it was Rav Chia Bar Ashi who was going to his teacher Zeiri, but it's no proof that a teacher can go to the student. What we have here is a student who is going to his teacher. Rabbi, fine. Rav Ashar livnei Aver Yemina limeber b'maya v'naturi pera. That Aver Yemina. Oh wait, Aver Yemina. Wait, does that mean the right side, or was that the name of the place? I feel like the name of the place was Aver Yemina, but now I can't remember. Whatever it is, Rava allowed these people who had to guard their fruit to make sure, I guess that, I don't know, they wouldn't be consumed either by other people or by animals, whatever it is, but they had to guard their fruit. So Rava would allow that these people who had to guard their fruit to cross through the water in order to get to the other side where their orchards were to guard the fruit. Abai says to Rava Tani that there's taka a brisa that supports you. That the guarders of the fruits can go through water until their necks, and there's nothing to be concerned about in order to guard their fruit. Rav Yosef Sharlu livnei Beitarbu limeber b'maya lemeise lefirka. So Rav Yosef allowed the people of Beitarbu to pass through water in order to go to the shir that was taking place on Yom Kippur. There was a lecture, a Torah shir that was happening on Yom Kippur. Rav Yosef allowed the people to pass through water in order to get to the sermon, the shir on Yom Kippur. Lemezel lo sharlu, but he did not allow them to go back home. Okay, there's a one-way allowance that they were allowed to go through the water to go to the shir, but not to go home afterwards. Says Abai to Rav Yosef, but if you say that, well then next year they're not going to want to come to the shir because they're going to get stuck. Those who say Sharlu Lemesei v'Sharlu Lemezel, those who say that Taka, no, it was Rav Yosef who said they're allowed to go through the water to get to the shir and even to go home. Amalei Abai, to which Abai responded to Rav Yosef, he says B'Shlama Lemesei L'chaya Lemezel my time. So Abai asks Rav Yosef, he says, I understand why they could go through the water in order to get to the shir, because they're going to do a mitzvah, they're going to the shir. But why should they be allowed to return? To go from the shir? The answer is, like Abai answered in the first version, that is that, if we don't allow them to get back, then they won't come in the future. Rav Yehuda Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, Havukaime Aguda Denai Pros, Amabar de Chatzdat. So Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda were on the bank of the Euphrates, which was, I guess, opposite the bank of the Chatzdat. Vavakai Rami bar Papa Meach Gisa, and Rami bar Papa was on the other side, I guess, of the Euphrates. Ramalu, and he said to them, Ramalu Kale, he yelled out to them, and Rami bar Papa says to Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, hey, can I cross the water over here because I want to ask you a shaila? Rav Yehuda, so says Rav Yehuda to Rami bar Papa, Rav Shmuel Damitavayu, the Rav and Shmuel both say over, yeah, no problem, you can cross the water as long as you do not extend your hands below the hem of your clothing to lift it up to prevent it from getting wet. As long as you don't do that, it's okay. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, to those who say that was Taka Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, who said Tanina, that we have a Mishnah that says over you can cross through the water as long as you do not extend your hands past the hems of your garment in order to mitachas chefes chaluko, in order to lift up the bottom of your garment so that to prevent it from getting wet. As long as you don't do that, yes, you can cross and it's fine. Maskefler of Yosef asked the kasha, 1 second, how could it be that we're saying that on Yom Kippur you're allowed to walk through water that goes up until your neck? Even on a weekday, are you allowed to walk through water that goes up to your neck? The pasuk says, it's we saw this pasuk quoted in Masechta Shkolim, I believe. I was looking at it with Reb Hillel a few weeks ago, the other week. Anyways, so the pasuk says there in Yechezkel that the waters were coming out from the Kodesh HaKodashim, and there was I think an angel who was sort of guiding him through the water, and he measured 1,000 amis v'yavrenu b'mayim me'afsayim, and he took me through the water. It went up to my ankles. So we see that you're allowed to walk through water that goes up to your ankles. He measured another 1,000 amas and took me to water that then got up to my knees. So we see that you're allowed to go through water up to your knees. He counted another 1,000 amas, and then he took me through water that went up to my thighs, or is that loins? Either one, thighs, loins. I think it's kind of similar. So you can go through your loins. You can go into water up to your loins. But then after that, he went another 1,000 amas, and then he got to water that was impassable. So we see that about you can't really go into water that goes past your loins. That's deeper than your loins. Says Abaye, that was a unique situation because the water there in that particular stream was very, very stark, and it was just impassable. But on Yom Kippur, if you're going to visit your Rebbe and you have to pass through water that goes up to your neck, that's okay. And also during the week. Is it possible that you could have swam through that water? Tamalom could go amai mesachu, that know that the water was water that you couldn't swim through. Mai mesachu siyuta. Sachu is swimming. She can call in the sayota siyacha. Okay. Is it possible that you could pass through that water with a small boat? That you wouldn't be able to pass through an ani shayit, which we're going to explain in a second. Is it possible you could pass through this water that was coming out of the temple in a big ship? That it's other would not be able to pass through it. My mashma, what is that? How do we understand this? Ani shayit, this other. Rav Yosef, it's like Rav Yosef explained. Lo tazil bei besfinas tzayadin urvune rabasi lo tiguzina, that you won't be able to pass through this water either with a small fisherman's boat or like a big starke ship. Says Rav Yehuda ben Pazi that even the angel of death is unable to pass through this water that gushes out of the Kodesh HaKodashim. It says over here that in Ani Shayit won't be able to pass through, and it also says by the Malach HaMaves in Sefer Eov, it says that he was going Mishot Ba'aretz, from passing around in the land. So Shot and Shayit, so the Malach HaMaves won't even be able to go through this water. Wow. That was some daf. Ayin Zayin of Masechta Yoma. Some big dapim these days, some big dapim. Anyways, so the first part of the daf was that interesting agadata with Gavriel and Daniel, when with the Avodah Zarah and the Beis Hamikdash, and Gavriel and the officer of Persia and the tax, and how Gavriel invoked Daniel in order to save them from the tax. Very interesting stuff. We then brought an additional source for Rechitza being Inui. We also talked about Ne'ilas HaSandal being Inui, Tashmish Hamita being Inui. We said that when we say that you don't wash, that you don't bathe and you don't apply oils, that's not just to your entire body, that's even to parts of your body. And then we had interesting things about being able to pass through water in order to visit your Rebbe or to go to a shir, things like that. And some interesting agadatas along the way. That was Daf Ayin Zayin of Masechta Yoma. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Cheers.